You see, companies, they come and go, but talent is forever. Here's your look at the NECA Toys, The Boys Homelander Ultimate Action Figure. With the face of a movie star and the superpowers of a god, Homelander is the greatest superhero alive and the leader of the Seven. Not only can he fly, he's got super strength and super hearing, he can see through almost anything with his X-ray vision and then destroy it with his laser eyes. On the surface, he's affable, modest, and sincere. The ultimate Boy Scout, an all-American God-fearing patriot. But just like mere mortals, even superheroes have secrets. Just before this review gets underway, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of the Boys Homelander that we could have a look at in this review. Homelander as well as Starlight, 2 of the 7 that we've gotten so far from NECA Toys, are available right now in retail stores and online if you're looking to pick this one up for yourself. Being a big fan of the Boys TV series and can't wait for the new season to start. In fact, it's actually shot nearby me. Again, I can't wait for new Boys figures to come out from NECA Toys. So let's have a look at the accessories to come include with Homelander. Starting first, we'll come include with a couple of fists. Now, normally I would be one to say, oh boy, do we need fists? Why do these figures always have to come include with fists? But being the type of nature and character that Homelander is, fists seems like an appropriate accessory to come include with the figure. Ironically enough, though, even though the fists are included, they're not stock with the figure when you get them out of the packaging. Quite the contrary, actually. The hands that come with the figure when you get them out of the package, the plastic prison, if you will, is actually a bunch of grabbing hands, mauling hands, if you will. It's kind of surprised. Normally, when you get figures like this usually is the alternate option, and it's already still sitting in the tray as extra accessories. But these hands were already stock on the figure when you get them out of the packaging. The rest of his accessories are basically just heads. I guess technically as well, he comes also with his laser eye vision. And those work specifically with one of his eyes, or one of his heads. It's this head right here. You can probably already see the real reasoning why you know that this one is the one that goes with the heat eyes, because when you look at the difference between the two, this one right here has holes in his eyes. Not to mention he has the glow effect painted all around his eyes as well, so it's easy to know which one is which. All you have to do is take the heat eyes, the heat ray vision eyes, which I kind of feel at some point may have come included with another figure, possibly even that Superman we got at one point. Anyways, this just fits. Ooh, this looks so painful. Going to fit one of the posts inside his eyeball socket, and then we'll do well, you really want to do both of them at the same time. Line them all up. And as excruciatingly painful as it may look, you fit them inside of his eyes and sort of just correct things up. There we go. And he has the laser eye effect. That's pretty cool. I like the fact that they've done that. Now, one good thing is he does also have a second head sculpt too. Let's just go ahead and pluck those from the eyes. We'll just put those to the side. He also comes with this head sculpt too. Now, unfortunately, though, this head sculpt, on mine at least, has a little bit of yellow that's right by his face. It almost looks like he's got mustard on his face. And the only real difference between this one and the stock head sculpt that comes with the figure seems to be the fact he's got some additional strands of hair coming down to the side. The head sculpts don't seem too different, though this one right here seems to almost have a slightly longer chin. Unless it's just my eyes playing tricks on me. While I appreciate certainly several heads to come include with Homelander, it would have been nice that they could have packaged the figure, I think, with different expressions. Because like this head sculpt as an expression seems so close to this one already that it almost seems like you're almost getting the exact same head sculpt, short of just the hair being slightly different. I think while looking at the likeness-wise and excluding the other head sculpt because it's got holes in his eyes, I think from a likeness standpoint, I almost feel like this head sculpt is a closer rendition, a little more closer proximity to the actor that plays Homelander. This one, again, I feel like the chin is just slightly longer, and this one looks a little more squared off here. To change out the heads, by the way, even though this is the head I'm going to settle with, just go ahead and grab the head, pop it off the ball joint. One thing you'll notice about the heads, they're sitting on top rather large ball pegs. Not sure why they have to be so large and why a post wouldn't have been just as effective. But anyways, there's the inner cavity of the head. That's quite a large hole. And then we're going to go ahead and just fit the other head just on top of his ball joint, just like that. wiggle things back in place, making sure, of course, you're getting it back onto that ball joint. If you do have any difficulties, by the way, getting the heads onto the ball joints properly, you can always run the tip. I wouldn't even call it really a tip necessarily, but just taking a hairdryer and heating the bottom sockets. You can also submerge this in water too, but if you don't want the heads to be wet, then yeah, just, run a few passes with the hairdryer just to soften up that plastic. And it should make things putting the heads back onto the post a little bit more easier. And again, if you want to see the difference between that and the one that's got the heat eyes, there it is right there. Very, very close. The smile on the heat eyes head sculpt might be just a little bit more standout. It almost seems like he's smiling just a little bit more. Just by a little bit, not by much. This may have been a good opportunity right here for this head sculpt to use a more angrier head sculpt, like angrier mouth, for example, and maybe more, I guess, his eyebrows being a little bit lower down. Clearly a more angrier looking Homelander, I think, could have worked well with this head sculpt here. Anyways, bringing back the original one right here. It's just a shame I've got the little bit of yellow there on the side of his face. You know what we'll do? Where's that other head sculpt again? I'm going to go ahead and just pop the one I'm going to use anyways for the display purposes. Just going to pop this guy back off the ball joint, even though I just spent all the time doing it. Pop that back off and put this one back on the way it should have been. There we go. Because I do think of the 3 head sculpts, this is the best of the batch. I feel the resemblance is close. Something seems slightly off. I think it may be the case where the head sculpt is good and maybe the paint is a little too soft. The way it's been painted, he has a little bit of stubble there showing. Slightly more darker areas in the areas of his eyes. But I feel like the paint is maybe the thing that's letting down the head sculpt just a little bit. I feel like the head sculpt could have been a little bit better. Because really, when you look at the packaging, you know what? Let's bring the packaging back in. Clearly, they're using the figure's head sculpt. And see, this is what we've got with the actual figure. This is the image that they use on the back of the packaging. I don't think the head sculpt is really necessarily off. I think it's maybe just the paint they ultimately did at the factory that sort of causes the head sculpt to maybe look not as realistic. One thing also that the packaging image-wise also shows, he's got more darker areas on the sides of his hair, whereas this one is a little more closer to just being all blonde. There are a few little darker patches, sure, but it doesn't have the stark contrast of the more darker sides and then the lighter blonde on the top. Let's put that to the side. As for the rest of his body, Homelander does have his outfit that, of course, he wears in the show. He never seems to really get out of this outfit. I only hope that he actually has several of these and not actually just wearing the same outfit the whole time. The coloring of his outfit is good. In certain light, this seems to be the right blue. In other light, it actually comes across like he has more of a darker blue on his costuming. And like in the movie, it does have some, or like in the series, as you can see, similar to almost like a Superman. It's got almost that chainmail effect, the way that they've sculpted it. And that looks really nice. The one thing I really like about Homelander's costuming is the fact he does have these little eagle crests on the sides of his shoulders. These are painted nicely, I would say, in the gold. And speaking of gold also, when it comes to his collar piece, it's that dark kind of burgundy red. I would say maybe it's like a burgundy red, and then printed over top of it is the little logos, the little symbols there done also in the gold. Similar to the same logos, the same symbols, I should say, as the rest of his body. Now, looking at the figure as well, one other thing I would say, if I hold him back like this, I feel like his lower half is a little too short. The top half, if I go from like my finger up, proportionally, I feel like his torso matches the size of his head, but I feel like maybe his lower half, maybe it's the lower leg could be the problem. It also could be just an optical illusion, the fact that he does have the hinge joints down here in his knees. This will give him a double hinge on the knees themselves. Maybe that's the thing that's throwing me off, because when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking almost like his legs start here, when in actual fact, they start up here. He does have the little eagle logos on the fronts of his boots, some nice gold trim on the sides as well. And then, of course, one of the calling cards of Homelander as well is the fact he does have the American flag for his cape. The material that they've used for the flag, for the cape, I should say, it's actually a nice material. It's got a little bit of elasticity to it. It's very soft to the touch. It looks finished on the outside. Maybe it doesn't look as finished on the inside, so while you're looking at the front of the figure, it isn't going to have as much the finished look as it does, like I said, on the outside of it. But it's a nice looking material. It's a nice material that they've used for the cape, and it's assembled. They've attached it sort of in the area where the neck sits inside. Well, even just underneath that, it's actually right where this collar piece is. They've tucked the cape in there, so it's a nice secure grip. It's not like you have to clip it on. Back in the day, those older figures where you actually took a C-clip, clipped it onto the neck. You don't do that. I mean, these figures are all now where the capes are permanently attached to the inside of their torsos. So it's nice. It's a nice material cape that they've used here. It's a good looking figure, but like I said, it does have issues where I feel like the head sculpt, I feel like, again, it's the paint. It's probably the paint. Similar to when we had a look at the Things McCready. I thought the head sculpt had potential, but I feel like the paint may be just slightly under-delivered. And I feel like that may have been the case here with Homelander. Good looking head sculpt, but maybe the paint is just slightly off, and that's what's throwing off, I feel like, the likeness, which could have been a lot better if the paint was just a little bit better. Let's talk about Homelander's articulation. When it comes to his head, he actually has 2 ball joints. One here, and then while here you can't really see it, it sits right behind the collar, right down here. While the neck here itself doesn't really do too much movement, I mean, it moves just a little bit. You sort of can see his Adam's apple moving just a little bit back and forth. Really, the one that's doing all the work is this ball joint right here. This allows the head very easily to move up if you want to have him in a flight pose. Down, if you want to look like he's brooding, stewing over something. You rock the head back and forth this way. And you can also rotate the head all the way around. Now, when it comes to his shoulders, these little side shoulder pieces of the eagle are softer plastic, and they're actually attached to this part of his arm instead of this part right here. Because of that, at least when it comes to moving his arms up, the eagles go along with the shoulders. They're not actually restricting the articulation. Mind you, I can only really get the arms to about a 45-degree angle. Nothing more after that. It seems like it really gets hung up here, and I really don't want to pop these off as a result of it. You can, however, though, because where these are attached, again, softer plastic, you can rotate the arms all the way around. Now, they will creak, they will squeak, and while you're doing it, you want to make sure that you don't get any bit of the cape tucked in there, because you don't want to rip the cape in the process. You can rotate the arms all the way around. Again, very squeaky, very creaky, but you can at least still do that. I like that they put it here and not up here. Now, as for his arms swivel back and forth at the top of the joint, the first elbow joint, and then he has a second one of those at the base, where I guess the rest of his forearm or the top of his glove starts. He also has a double hinge on the elbow, so there's the 1 and there's the 2. You get a double hinge happening there. For the figure's upper torso, luckily he does have an upper torso ball joint, and they actually rather nicely concealed it, so they've hid the joint underneath his belt. You can move the torso all the way around. It's a slightly softer plastic, at least here. Up the top, not so much, but down here I've noticed it's slightly softer, and it certainly is a lot softer down here when we get to like the lower torso of the figure. Again, when it comes to his legs, the legs split out. And because, again, like this is all soft plastic anyways, while you're moving the legs, yeah, you're going to be hearing a real squeaky sound the whole time doing it. You can bring the legs forward. You can bring the legs back. He does have a double hinge on the knee. A little harder to access this one, but he does have double hinges happening. And then he has the swivel in the lower leg, not at the boot necessarily, but just a higher up, just a little higher than the boot. You can rotate the leg all the way around. And then when it comes to his feet, you can move them back and forth this way, ankle pivot them, and the figure doesn't have any toe articulation. Even though it kind of looks like he should have toe articulation, like they could have put the cut right there, this Homelander doesn't have one. Kind of on the fence how I feel with Homelander here. I mean, I love the character in the show. I think NECA Toys has done a pretty good job on him. I feel like my issues are kind of like the lower half of him, right around the areas of his legs, because I feel like his legs are a little on the short side. I think the head sculpt has potential, but similar to the McCready that we looked at before, while the head sculpt is really good, I think it's maybe the paint. Some people have said it's the head sculpt, but I think the head sculpt's okay. I think the problem is the way that they painted it. They painted it way too soft. There's not enough stark contrast on his face to really bring those defined features in his face out. Based on the boys, so far NECA Toys have released 2 figures. The Homelander that we looked at in this review, and then the Starlight that we'll be looking at in the next review coming up. Surprisingly, I don't think they've yet released a Billy Butcher, which sort of has my head scratching. Out the gate, the first wave I feel should have been Billy Butcher, Homelander, and Starlight. to dictate how well these figures would have sold to justify them releasing more figures down the road. With only 2 figures, the Homelander and the Starlight, that puts a lot of pressure on their shoulders whether these figures sell well enough to justify NECA Toys continuing the line with a Wave 2, Wave 3, and Wave 4. Now, while I don't expect them to cover off all the characters that made this series, maybe a Huey, I think, could be made, but I don't know whether they would decide to release a Huey, a Frenchie, Kimiko, or even Mother's Milk. I hope at least that we're going to be getting ourselves a Billy Butcher, and we're going to be getting the rest of the 7. Characters like the Deep, characters like Black Noir. I think Black Noir would make a fantastic figure. Yes, there is a character called Black Noir. If you, by the way, have not ever seen The Boys, you are missing out on an incredible superhero series where all the characters have some real edge to them. And no character has a greater edge than Homelander here. As certainly it goes for a figure, the figure presents a pretty good looking, close enough likeness to Homelander. There are some shortcomings, admittingly, like his lower legs. His legs seem a little on the short side. I don't think it's necessarily the thighs. Maybe it is the thighs. Maybe the thighs need to be a little bit longer. The top torso is fine, but the lower legs almost make the figure look a little too squat, maybe. And then, of course, there's this head sculpt. Now, the reasoning why, in final looks, while I've got him spinning on the rotisserie, I've got the images on the back of the box showing, is because I wanted to also bring your attention to the idea that the images on the back are painted differently than the actual figure that we've got here. And I don't think the molds from one to the other are different. I think it's just a case of paint. I think what we have here are good three good head sculpts for Homelander. But again, I feel like it's just the paint. The paint's a little too soft. It doesn't have enough dark contrast. Because if you look at the pictures of Homelander on the back of the box here, he's got some really dark stubble on his face. He's got the darker shadowing of his hair, the sides of his hair at least. He has a lot more going for him. And again, I feel like it's the same head sculpt. This head sculpts that they've released with the figure, I think are just painted a little too soft. But other than that, I really like the look of Homelander and super excited to open up and have a look at Starlight. If you're a big fan of The Boys, I would definitely say support this line if you can. Because again, it really sucks for us to only get a Homelander and a Starlight and not even get ever a Billy Butcher. So really, if you are a big fan of the franchise, the licensing for what these companies release figures for, support the line. Pick these figures up and show these companies that yes, you do want to see future waves coming out. A big thank you, though, to the folks over at NECA Toys that provided this sample of The Boys Homelander that we could have a look at in this review. Like I said, we are going to be looking at Starlight in an upcoming review. So if you're a big fan of The Boys, stay tuned to this channel and making sure you're keeping your peepers peeled. If you are new here, though, making sure you hit that subscribe button down below. That's the thing. That's the crucial thing. That tells YouTube, first of all, it allows you to know when new videos are coming onto this channel. But further to that, if you turn on that bell notification, that's telling YouTube that, yes, you want to get those friendly reminders. And it makes videos like this more visible to people that aren't subscribed to this channel. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell notification. And make sure, again, you're keeping your peepers peeled to this channel because we will be looking at the review of Starlight in the not-so-distant future. Thanks for watching, guys. And I'll see you guys next time.